My husband tested my patience for 64 years. And now, I would trade every quiet night I have just to hear him annoy me one more time. Just once would be enough. Just to hear the way he used to slam the back door, just to see him hang his work cap in the wrong place again, just so I could mutter a small complaint under my breath. One more time. My name is Eleanor June. I am 93 years old. Walter passed away 6 years ago, and everyone likes to say that we had a beautiful marriage. 64 years together. People look at that number, at the old photographs, at our children and grandchildren, and they assume it must have been a perfect love story. But it was not. It was never a fairy tale. It was a mess, a beautiful, stubborn, noisy, very real mess. And I made more mistakes than I made things right in that marriage. So today, I will confess 7 things I did to that man, things I am not proud of, things that almost cost me the most precious part of my life. You may not like hearing this, but you need to hear it. If there is still someone sitting across from you at the dinner table tonight, then you need to hear this before it is too late. My first confession is this: for more than the first 20 years, almost 24 years, I tried to turn Walter into someone easier to live with, in my own way. He would walk past the kitchen and whistle. It irritated me. He wore the same few old flannel shirts. Again and again I complained. He left coins, screws, and random receipts all over the table. I cleaned them up and then muttered about it. He forgot to wipe the mud off his shoes. Before coming inside, I repeated it over and over, as if it were an unforgivable fault at the time. I thought I was caring. I thought I was helping my husband become better. I thought love meant fixing what was not right. But the truth is, every time I spoke like that, I was sending a very cold message. The man I married was always disappointing me. I realized it one day when I heard my daughter Margaret speaking to her husband in that exact same tone, the same nagging, the same disappointment, and I heard myself in her voice. Walter did not need to be fixed. He just needed to live with someone who did not treat him like something that was broken. My second confession is the one that still wakes me in the middle of the night. In 1984, Walter worked the night shift at a maintenance shop in a grain mill near our home. For almost 9 months, he was exhausted. Every evening he came home, ate in silence, sat down in his chair, and fell asleep with the lights still on. And I felt like I was sinking. 3 children, a house that always needed something done. I baked pies for orders, then mended clothes for neighbors, right at the kitchen table. I felt like I was carrying everything, alone one evening. I took a sheet of paper from an old notebook and began to write. I wrote down everything Walter did wrong. Every time he forgot an anniversary, every time he chose to help his friends instead of staying home, every time his silence made me feel like I did not exist. I wrote as if I were building a case against him. Then I taped that paper to the refrigerator door. I wanted him to see it, not to start a conversation, but so he would know how much he had disappointed me. Walter saw the paper. The next morning, he said nothing. He did not tear it down. He did not explain. He just went to work, like any other day. 3 days passed like that, and I grew even angrier. I wanted him to react. I wanted an argument. I wanted him to see how much I had been hurting. On the 4th night, I walked into the kitchen and saw another sheet of paper beside mine, Walter's handwriting, but it was not a list of my faults. It was 19 things he loved about me. He wrote that I hum when I need dough, that I always leave him the crispy corner of the pie, that I sat beside him all night when his brother died without forcing him to speak, that I make this house feel warm, even in the coldest winter. I stood there for a long time. I realized I had spent years remembering every small mistake he made, while he had been remembering the good things about me I tore my paper down, but I knew the thing that had been hurt was not only Walter, it was my own heart. I had lived too long in the habit of looking for faults. We did not speak much about it for a few weeks. Then one Saturday afternoon, Walter was fixing the front steps. I brought him a cup of coffee. I apologized, not only for the paper, but for carrying all those things in my head for so many years. He looked at me and said he could handle my anger. But my silence was what made him feel alone. From that day on, we had a rule: no more silence. We could argue. We could say the wrong things, but we would not use silence as a punishment. My third confession is something I am ashamed to admit. I found it easier to forgive strangers than my own husband. Someone at church would say something thoughtless to me, and a few days later I would forget it. A neighbor borrowed my best baking tray and returned it scratched, and I still let it go. Those things did not stay in my mind for long, but if Walter forgot to buy milk on his way home, I could bring it up for months. If he forgot one small thing, I held on to it, as if it were evidence against him. It took me many years to understand why. I was quicker to be angry with him because I felt safe with him. I believed he would not leave, and that belief gave me permission to treat him worse. The person who loves us the most often receives the sharpest edges of us. My fourth confession sounds very simple, but it shaped my entire marriage. There were two sentences I used for many years. One made everything colder, one brought it back to life. The first sentence was, "You should have. Walter brought food home, and I said you should have bought a different kind of coffee. He fixed a torn screen door, and I said you should have done it a long time ago. He did something kind, and I still found what was not enough. Almost everything he did, I had a you should have waiting behind it." The second sentence was, "Thank you." I began to learn that sentence. One evening, Walter brought home a small bouquet of yellow daisies from the grocery store. It was not a special occasion. He just thought I would like them, and my first reaction was to ask why he picked yellow when I preferred white. Walter set the flowers down on the table. He did not argue. He did not explain. He simply walked out of the kitchen, and in that moment, I saw what I had been doing for years. Every time he offered me something kind, I covered it with a layer of judgment. From that day on, I practiced saying thank you first if something needed to be corrected. I could say it later, and many times. It was better not to correct anything at all. The years I began with "you should have" were the coldest years. The years I began with "thank you" were the gentlest. My fifth confession is something I wish I had understood sooner. Walter was not good at remembering birthdays. He often forgot anniversaries too. He did not use fancy words. He was not romantic in the way you see in films. And one year, on our anniversary, he gave me a slow cooker. I was angry. I thought he only saw me as a housewife. I did not speak to him for almost 2 days. In my mind, that gift was proof that he did not understand me. But then I began to remember other things. He drove nearly 50 minutes each way for 12 weeks to take me to the hospital. When my back could not hold me upright, he learned how to braid hair and prepare lunch for our youngest daughter. When I was stuck in bed one winter, there was a time. He sat in his truck outside a funeral home for hours, just to wait until I was ready to come out. Walter loved me very deeply. He just did not always love me in the way I expected, and I was too busy keeping score of small faults to see those larger acts of love. If you are still listening to this, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you believe that late confessions like these can help someone change sooner. I would also like to hear your story. How long have you been with your person? What is the hardest thing about marriage that no one ever told you? I am 93 years old. This house gets very quiet at night. Your stories make it feel less empty. My sixth confession is something I regret in a very quiet way in the early years. Walter was very funny. He would imitate the pastor after Sunday service. He made up silly lyrics to old songs. While washing dishes, sometimes he would pull me into a few dance steps. Right in the middle of the kitchen, when the radio was playing. We used to laugh a lot. Then life came in. Children, money, a house that needed repairs, bills, sick relatives. There were more things we had to do than things we wanted to do, and slowly, we were no longer two friends, we became two people. Running a family machine. Every conversation was about money, chores, the children's schedules, or something that was broken. It was only in the later years after the children had left that we found that laughter again. Walter told the same old stories many times, and I laughed, as if I were hearing them for the first time, because by then I finally understood how valuable that laughter was. What I regret is not only losing him, it is the years in between, when we forgot how to be friends. My seventh confession is the most painful one. I always thought I had time. I would say it tomorrow. I would say it on the weekend. I would say it when I felt less tired. I would say it when things were calmer. I kept pushing the important things to some better moment. But life does not really slow down. It simply stops. Without warning, Walter passed away early one morning. The light was still faint. I sat by his bed and held his hand, and everything I had held back for so many years suddenly rushed into those few short minutes. I tried to say it all. I said thank you. I said I was sorry. I told him I was grateful. I told him I loved him. But it was not enough. No one can fit 64 years of unsaid words into a few final breaths. Walter looked at me and said he just hoped he had been enough for me. Just that one sentence after all those years, the man I loved the most, the one who stayed for a lifetime, still left this world with a small doubt. He was not sure if he had made me happy. And in that moment, I understood. The years I spent criticizing, staying silent, and holding back what needed to be said had left that crack in his heart. Marriage is not about finding the right person, and everything works out. It is about becoming the right person. Again and again, through the years, you will be wrong many times. There will be days when you are the worst version of yourself. You will say things you should not say, or worse. You will hold back the things you should have said. But what matters is whether you come back the next morning, whether you choose kindness one more time, whether you choose that person one more time. Do not keep score in your head. Do not use silence as a form of punishment. Do not wait for them to become easier to love before you become kinder. If tonight there is still someone sitting across from you at the dinner table, if they still call your name from the next room, if their cup is still sitting on the sink, that means you still have time. Walter's cap is still hanging on the hook in the hallway. I have never taken it down. There are things we do not put away, not because we are weak, but because one day we understand that those little messes were once proof that we were loved.